Dear students, this particular video is for a correction that I got an update from a colleague of mine. I thanks the colleague, Mr. Jesper. Um, the round robin, the example that we did, there is a little error that was made, and this video is particularly to solve that problem. And I will also advise you, dear students, that when you are drawing the Gantt chart for round robin scheduling, always pay attention to the arrival time and the contents of the ready queue. This was the example that was given. The following set of processes with their arrival times and burst time given in milliseconds. Draw a Gantt chart illustrating the execution of these processes using a round robin quantum time for scheduling. Determine the average turnaround time. These are the processes A, B, C, D, E. We have the arrival time, we have the burst time. Now, at time t equals to 0, in my ready queue, I only have A. For those of you who might not know or who forgot, the ready queue is simply a queue where the processes ready for execution are present. And at time 0, A is the only process which is available. So I am going to execute process A for 3 milliseconds, though the quantum time is 4. Although it was already explained, let me say it back again. For every process that are being under execution for a round robin scheduling, they are available to run for a particular quantum time. But if the amount of time they are provided, they are supposed to use for the execution is lower than the quantum time, then they will only execute for the amount of time. That is why A executes from 0 to 3 because he needs only 3 units as his build time stipulates, meaning that A has complete its execution. But now at time 3, you realize that by the time you are done with A, B was already in the system because B came at time 2. So now at time t equals to 3, why am I focusing at time t equals to 3? Because that is the time when A is done. And at time t equals to 3, in my ready queue I have B only because by the time 3, A is done. So in my ready queue I only have B, so B will be the only process I'm going to execute. So this is what I'm going to have. You realize that B has a burst time of 6. And if the burst time you have is above your quantum time, it means that you only execute for your quantum time. For their yes, the quantum time available. So that's why B execute for 4 units. That is from 3 to 7, meaning that he is now left with 2 units. And B completed its execution at 7. At time 7, you realize that C and D are already present. So by the time B was still executing, C and D already entered the system. That is why at time t equals to 7, as you can see, C and D arrived. By then B was executing. So in my ready queue, I am having C because C came first. Then I have D before I have B. Because take note, when a process executes, it is now sent at the end of the ready queue. That's why my ready queue now is C, D, B. Because by the time B was still executing, that is from 3 to 4 to 7, sorry, C entered at time 4 and D entered at time 6. And that's why they were already present in the ready queue before B was being sent to the end. From there now, at time t equals to 7, as you can see. So C now is the next process I'm executing because I'm executing the first process in the ready queue. So C is the next. And C needs exactly 4 units. That's why C executes from 7 to 11, making C to complete its execution. And by the time C is done, E is already in the ready queue. And when E enters, my ready queue becomes D, B, E. That's what we have. So at time t equals to 11, E arrives and joins the end of the ready queue because E came when in my ready queue I was having D and B. So that's why E is at the end. Now, D is the next person I'm going to execute because he's the one at the top of the queue and D needs 5 units. So he will only execute for the quantum time, which is 4. That is why I will have this. That is D will take from 11 to 15. And that is how D will be left with 1 millisecond for execution. From there now, at time 15, D has been executed, so it will be sent to the end of the ready queue. And that's how at time t equals to 15, my ready queue becomes now BED, meaning that what? After D executed, it came at the end of the ready queue. So that's what we have. So the next process to execute now is B. And B is left only with 2 units. That is why B will execute from 15 to 17, as you can see, dear students. From there now, B is done with execution. So in my ready queue now, I have E, then D. And E needs only 2 units. So E will execute from 17 to 19. That's how E is done with execution. And now in my ready queue, I'm left only with D, which only needs 1 unit. So that's how my Gantt chart is coming about for the round robin for this particular example. We realize that in the example that I solved, I had E being executed before B, which is not correct because by the time E entered the system, B was already added to the end of the ready queue. So pay attention when it comes to it. When it comes to priority scheduling, preemptive priority scheduling, you know the arrival time, same thing for shortest remaining job next, and also for the round robin. So in general, when it comes to preemptive scheduling, always note the priority for preemptive priority based scheduling, the task with the shortest burst time for shortest remaining job next, and the content of the ready queue for a round robin, dear students. So after this now, E is done with its execution, and sorry, D is done with its execution, and this is the table we have. Arrival time given, burst time given, completion time given, turnaround time given. And then when we calculate the average turnaround time, we have 10 milliseconds. So I hope this video gave you more insight about the round robin, and also to pay attention when you are drawing such, because if the Gantt chart is not correct, it implies that the calculation will not also be correct. I hope you enjoyed the video. Do not forget to like, to subscribe, and to share for our community to grow. And once more, thanks for the feedback, dear colleague.